This is Rose Unplugged, and I'm talking to Congressman Guy Rushenthaler. Congressman, I've got to ask you, I mean, because everyone's talking about this right now, what are we going to do in the future to prevent what we are seeing right now after an election? People don't like this. We should have, this is what I'm hearing, we should have one day for election and that's it. Forget about the mail-in ballots. Okay for absentee ballots. And what the hell was this stopping the count all of a sudden, as soon as we saw that President Trump was ahead? What are your thoughts on this, and how do we go forward? Because people are very upset about the process at the moment.
Rose, they should be upset about the process. I mean, this is an absolute disaster if you look what's going on. And right, wrong, or indifferent, there's a perception by both sides that something is not right in this election. And the perception could become reality where people lose faith in the system. That's not good for us. That's not good for democracy. But what we're seeing looks like some election from a third world country, a banana republic, a former Eastern Soviet bloc that is its first election out of the gate since declaring independence from the USSR. I mean, it's truly shameful. The state that got it right, though, if you notice, is Florida. Yes. Because Florida in 2000 had the big issue with Bush v. Gore. Right. They got it right. I wish other states would take a note from the playbook of the Floridians and replicate that. But moving forward, I think what we need to do is first and foremost, make sure that people know there's a difference between absentee voting and mail-in ballots. Let me explain that real quick. Absentee voting is when you write to the state and say, I'm not going to be there on election day, and then they send you a ballot, you fill it out and send it back in. That's fine. We've been doing that for a long time. Right. The mail-in ballots, especially the universal mail-in ballots, are the problem, because then the state sends out all these ballots, a lot of discrepancy on the voter registration list, et cetera, and then you have excess ballots that are floating around. Additionally, we're seeing problems with the fact, take for example, we're both from Pennsylvania. What's going on in Pennsylvania, where you have votes that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania said could be counted Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday after the election. Additionally, I don't care what anybody says, Rose. The problem is if there's a postmark that is illegible, that is still okay. Also, if there's prepaid postage, then the date stamp on the postage mark doesn't have to be date stamped. I convoluted that, but basically it's a way to get around it, so you don't know if that ballot came in before the election, on election day, or after. That is a problem. And then additionally, there's no signature verification. So clearly this is a recipe for fraud. So that's that. There's so much going on. Let me just try to divide it in buckets. So that's what's going on in Pennsylvania. Now, the stop the count issue, this is being conflated by the media. There's stop the count, but then there's also count every vote. Both things can be true at once. Okay. We as Republicans want every legal vote to be counted. I think that when the legal votes are counted, especially in Arizona, the president will win re-election. We want the votes in Pennsylvania to not get counted if you can't verify if they came in after the election day. And why is that? It's because, again, we are now ripe for fraud, because you can have Democrat operatives or activists that fill out these absentee ballots, no signature verification, no state stamp on the postage mark. And then there's some instances where they don't even need to be stamped, because you could just drop them off theoretically in a naked ballot. We don't want those counted, because we think that the statistical probability of these being like 98% for Joe Biden is statistically impossible, especially with the historic number of African-American and Hispanic votes that the president got elsewhere. The math just doesn't make sense. And just one more thing before I hand it back over. In Pennsylvania, look at the statewide elections. We typically, as Republicans, don't have good records winning statewide row offices. Right. We just don't. I don't care what anybody says. Look back at history. We typically don't do that well. Right. But you had our state auditor general and our state treasurer candidate, both Republicans, win, which I applaud that. They ran good campaigns. I know them both. Congratulations. But it doesn't make sense that the amount of money that President Trump spent, the amount of rallies that he did, even the fact that in polling, he was ahead of these candidates in polling. Yes. And now when you have these ballots coming in after the election, his lead is eroding, yet their statewide races are holding. Mathematically and statistically, it's idiosyncratic.
It works down ballot. It doesn't go the other way. And
Right.
a lot of us are looking at that, and that's the concern. And here's the other thing too, Congressman, when you consider what's happening right now, this isn't about not being able to take it on the chin or being a sore loser. It has nothing to do with that. I have worked campaigns, I have covered campaigns for 20 plus years. We've lost campaigns and we've said, okay, was there fraud? Yeah, but not to a degree where you could honestly say this wasn't right. Okay, there's always fraud, but every election I have been able to accept the results, even if it was someone I didn't vote for and I felt was bad for the country. Now, what we're looking at right now was more than one thing. We're looking at the harvesting of ballots. We're looking at the manipulation of ballots. We are looking at, I mean, we have story after story. They're being validated right now. I mean, I'm talking to the lawyers on the ground. I know what's happening. I know what's happening. And that's just in Pennsylvania, and I'm hearing from other states as well. And the fact that the networks all at the same time decided that they were no longer going to be calling any states. Many of the counties and several of these battleground states, when they saw that the president was pulling ahead, they stopped counting. Erie County, they had cameras go off in the counting room overnight, 2 of them simultaneously. Weird, right? But what I'm saying is, we've always had anecdotal evidence in the past, but now we know that something bigger is happening right now. And the thing is, it's not because it's this, I don't care who was running for president right now. What we are seeing is possibly the death of a republic. Because if we can't trust our elections, if anyone feels disenfranchised, if there is such a problem as we have right now, then I got to tell you, we are not confident going forward that we will preserve this republic, the representative republic. We will have to say to Benjamin Franklin, we kept it for so long and then we didn't. And now I feel like we're at that precipice. I feel like we almost are losing that representative republic. We may never have another Republican president if we do not address this situation. We've got to fight it. We've got to address it, and we've got to be honest about what's happening here.
Well, just at a micro level, person to person, think about it. If you count an illegal ballot or a fraudulent ballot, then it dilutes the power in the voice of the legal ballot that was cast. So when we are standing against fraudulent ballots and against what's going on, the lack of transparency, we as Republicans are standing up for everybody who cast a legal ballot, whether it was for President Trump or Vice President Biden. Yet we're being demonized. And when I hear the left say that we have to accept the results of this election, yeah, of course we will, no matter where it is, but we want it to be fair and we want it to be legal. But the people that didn't accept the results of the election were the Democrats, because for 4 years, they were telling us that the election of 2016 was fraudulent. There's Russian interference. That was a conspiracy theory that was perpetuated by every single Democrat and by the mainstream media. So don't come and tell me now that I'm not accepting the results of the election. Gore fought President Bush for something like 30, 35 days. We can still take a look at these ballots as they come in for a few weeks at least to make sure they're accurate. And again, the perception is what's harmful, because moving forward, no matter who wins, whether it's Trump or Biden, there's going to be a cloud. There's going to be a level of suspicion over either candidate, because the mainstream media botched this and because the local election officials allowed acts to go on, such as just in Western Pennsylvania, ballots being sent to the wrong districts that were already pre-filled out. And we know that occurred at least in Fayette County. The fact that you had workers in places like Michigan put up cardboard so the public couldn't look in. The fact in Philadelphia that they would not allow poll watchers from the Republican Party and the Trump campaign to actually watch what's going on. So you had all these actions that lead to this perception that something is not right, and that's what's so scary.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And by the way, congratulations. I'm sorry it took me so long to say that. Congratulations. I personally
Thank you, Rose. I appreciate it.
That you won the election. This is something very serious. Our republic, the fact that we are a representative republic, means everything. That's how we've survived as long as we have. And I brought up Benjamin Franklin before, but let's be honest, he wasn't even sure how long a representative republic would last. And that's why when he answered the woman who stopped him and said, "What have we got, doctor, a monarchy or a republic?" He answered, "A republic if you can keep it." You must keep the republic.
What, Rose, if I could just say one more thing, I do have that you had mentioned about the different states being called. I think a lot of these states were called too early for Biden. So, for example, Arizona was called ridiculously too early for
Absolutely.
Biden. On the other hand, Florida should have been called very early for President Trump, and the mainstream media refused to call it for Trump. Alaska is the same thing. I know Alaska is only 3 electoral votes.
Doesn't
There's
matter.
no reason why Alaska should not have been called right away. Pennsylvania should have been called right away for President Trump. It was not. So what happened was the mainstream media set up this false narrative that Joe Biden won right away or had an exaggerated lead. At the same time, by the same matrix, they refused to call other states that should have been called for President Trump, deflating the idea that he was going to win. Well, that's very dangerous because all summer we've seen the left burn cities down, use lasers to
Yes.
blind federal officers, loot, riot violently in the streets. So they have set up this recipe where if President Trump prevails, which there is still a good chance that he does, and I can explain that, but if he prevails, the far left will start to engage more and more in violent acts. And don't give me any of this that it's the right that's engaged in these acts, because the plywood is going up with the expectation. The plywood went up in our major cities with the expectations that Antifa and the Democrats were going to act out. And certainly in Philadelphia, when you saw the violent protests erupt,
Right.
they weren't flying MAGA flags.
No.
They had Joe Biden flags that they were waving. So again, the mainstream media has acted recklessly. And if violence erupts, a lot of it will be attributed to their mishandling of this election.
Can I ask you one more question while I have you? What is, having served in the Pennsylvania legislature, what is the role? I mean, we've been hearing a lot of talk about those legislators stepping in at some point. What is their role in something like this? If there's any, if there's a huge problem in the state, if it comes down to the electorate, what is the role? I'd like to hear from you what that is.
So I was on the phone earlier today talking with a state senator about just this, and we're looking into it. But I can tell you that there is an avenue in Congress for this, and that is this: at least one congressman and one senator from that state has to make a motion that the election results from that given state are not valid. Once that is made, so again, you need a senator from the state and at least one congressman from the state in each body to make a motion to deliberate this. At that point, the Senate deliberates and the House deliberates. I believe it's time capped at about 2 hours. I got to pull that. But then you can set aside those results. And remember, if there's no decision, there's no clear majority within the Electoral College, then that decision gets placed in the House of Representatives. And it's not one man, one vote. It's the delegation. So, for example, Montana, which has one delegate, would make a decision. Presumably, it would be cast clearly for President Trump. But then Pennsylvania, we have 18 congressmen. It's a 9-9 split. So then we would vote amongst ourselves, and then someone would ultimately vote. And only when the House of Representatives has voted and has a clear majority, then is the president selected.
That's interesting. I did not know that at all. I think you talked to the same state senator that I did. I have a feeling, we won't mention names, but I do have a feeling we talked to the same one. And certainly I hope that if it comes down to that they would be bold enough to do their duty, correct?
Well, remember, the sad part is that we're at this place to begin with.
Oh,
And the other irony is that when we're talking about this, it was the Democrats that in 2016 had all the celebrities lined up cutting ads, asking the Electoral College to not vote for President Trump, but to vote for somebody like a Kasich or somebody, whatever. You remember that. So It's funny because when we start talking about that, and I'm not saying anybody's seriously advocating for this yet, okay? But when we start doing it, the left goes nuts. But when it was President Trump that was elected in 2016, they got all these celebrities and they ran these ads to do it. It was okay when they did it. The hypocrisy has come home to roost for the Democrat Party because you saw them take huge losses on Tuesday. The public at large is fed up with their identity politics, the hypocrisy, the buddying up to the Chinese Communist Party, et cetera. Again, I still think there's a chance for the president to win, and it seems like the president should have won given the fact that we had such big Republican wins across the United States.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. You know, our president has a book, Never Give Up. So I hope he goes back and rereads it. I don't think he needs to. I think he knows how to get in there and keep standing. So let's hope for the best. Thank you so much for taking so much time with me today. I really wanted to get that input, and you gave me so much information that I didn't have. So thank you again, Congressman
Well,
Guy
thanks, Rose.
Rushenthaler, and congratulations again on your win.
I appreciate it. Take care, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.